Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to take a whole load of information and really boil it down to the essentials just for you.
That's right.
Today, we're diving into the numbers behind a market maybe you don't think about every day, but one that's definitely growing steadily, the global marine smoke signal market.
Yep. We've been digging through a pretty detailed market analysis report for this one, pulled out the key figures, the trends.
Our mission today is simple. Walk you through the key data points. We're talking market revenue, projected growth, looking at 2021 right through to 2033.
Globally first, then region by region, even country by country where the data allows.
Exactly. This dive is really tailored for you listening to give you a fast, insightful grasp of this specific global industry, purely based on what these numbers are telling us.
It's about getting beyond just, seeing figures on a page. What's the story they paint together?
Right. So let's start with that big global picture. What does the report say about the overall size and the direction of this market?
Okay, globally. The market for these smoke signals was valued at $157.181 million. That was back in 2021.
157 million in 2021. Got it. And the report projects forward, say, to 2025.
It does. The projection for 2025 is $196.2 million. So a decent step up.
Okay, clear growth expected pretty soon then. And looking further out, what about the 2033 forecast?
By 2033, the forecast suggests the global market could reach $305.702 million.
Wow, okay. That's getting close to double the 2021 number over that whole period.
What is a significant increase, yeah.
And the report usually gives a compound annual growth rate, a CAGR, right, to show the average annual growth. What's the global figure?
The global CAGR reported is 5.7%.
5.7% globally. Okay. Over more than 10 years, that suggests, well, really consistent demand, doesn't it? It's not exactly setting the world on fire, but it's solid expansion.
That's a good way to put it. It points towards things like, ongoing safety regulations, maybe regular replacement cycles, stuff that drives a persistent need worldwide.
Makes sense. Okay, let's start our tour. How about North America? What are the numbers telling us there?
Right, North America. It's shown as a pretty significant chunk of the market. It was valued at $56.899 million in 2021.
56, almost 57 million. And projections.
Moving to $69.749 million by 2025, and the projection for 2033 is $104.856 million.
Okay, and its average growth rate, the regional CAGR.
The CGR for North America as a whole is 5.228%.
Huh. So actually a little bit slower than that global average of 5.7% we just heard.
Yeah, slightly under the global rate reported here.
Interesting. And within North America, which countries are the main players, according to this data?
Well, no surprise. The United States is clearly the dominant force, just in terms of sheer market size.
Right. What are the figures?
Its value was $49.21 million back in 2021, projected to be $60.096 million in 2025, and then $89.578 million by 2033.
Okay, yeah, that's basically the vast majority of the North American market right there. And its growth rate, the U.S. CGR.
The U.S. CGR is 5.116%, so very close to that regional average for North America.
Yeah. Okay, steady growth from the big player. Any other interesting wrinkles in the North American data?
Well, yeah, actually. Take a look at Canada. Much smaller market in absolute dollars, of course, but the data shows a significantly higher projected growth rate.
Oh, how much higher?
Canada's market size goes from $3.983 million in 2021 up to $8.294 million by 2033. And its CAGR is 6.307%.
Whoa, 6.3%. That's like more than a full percentage point higher than the U.S. rate or the regional average. That's quite a difference.
It is noticeable, yeah. And Mexico also shows decent growth. It goes from $3.698 million to $6.983 million by 2033, and that's a 5.447% CAGR, so also a bit above the U.S. rate.
So within North America, you've got this huge, stable U.S. market, but maybe faster percentage growth projected for its neighbors, Canada and Mexico.
That's what the numbers seem to indicate, yeah. A large base in the U.S., faster acceleration elsewhere.
Fascinating how that pace can vary even within a region you might think of as pretty established. Okay, let's hop across the pond. Europe. What's the picture there?
Europe's also a substantial market. Started at $37.881 million in 2021. The projection hits $46.303 million by 2025 and $70.006 million by 2033.
Okay, 70 million by 2033. And the regional KGR for Europe?
Europe's regional KGR is 5.303%.
5.3. Okay, so very, very similar growth pace overall to North America, just a smaller starting market size.
Pretty much, yeah. Very close rates.
Now, the report breaks out quite a few European countries.
Yeah.
Any that particularly stand out maybe for faster growth?
Well, Germany's projected growth looks quite strong within Europe. It shows a KGR of 6.014%. That takes its market from about $7.4 million in 2021 up to $14.7 million by 2033.
Over 6% for Germany. That's notable.
Yeah. The UK is also solid 5.6667% CGR, going from roughly $4.9 million to $9.5 million.
Okay. What about slower growth areas in Europe based on these numbers? Anything that jumps out?
France and Italy are showing KGRs just a bit under 5%. France is 4.759%, Italy 4.93%. Russia is projected lower still at 4.262%, moving from about $2.8 million to $4.6 million. But the real outlier on the low side, according to this report, is Luxembourg, just a 2.972% CAGR projected, growing from only $0.227 million to $0.325 million.
Wow, under 3% CAGR for Luxembourg. That really stands out compared to Germany's 6% or even the regional average. It's definitely a mixed bag in Europe.
It really highlights how, market dynamics can differ quite a bit country by country, even when they're geographically close or under similar broad regulations.
Absolutely. Okay, let's shift gears now and head over to Asia Pacific. The report seemed to flag this region as a major growth engine.
It definitely does. Asia Pacific shows a significantly higher projected CAGR compared to North America or Europe.
Okay, lay the numbers on us.
The regional market there goes from $34.108 million in 2021 up to $44.243 million in 2025, and then a pretty robust $74.591 million projected by 2033.
74.5 million. It's a big jump from 34 million. What's the regional CAGR that gets it there?
The Asia Pacific regional CAGR is 6.747%.
Okay, 6.75% basically. That's comfortably above the global 5.7%.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.
5% basically. That's comfortably above the global 5.7%. So yeah, confirms it's a growth hotspot. Which areas or countries are driving that?
China leads in terms of market size, definitely. It's projected to grow from $11.153 million in 2021 up to $24.876 million by 2033. That's a solid CAGR of 6.928%, just slightly above the regional average.
Right. Still very strong.
Japan is also significant, moving from $4.843 million to $9.742 million. Its CAGR is 5.966%.
Okay, but what about the fastest growth in APAC? Where does the data point for real acceleration?
Well, India shows really remarkable acceleration according to this report. It has a projected CAGR of 7.893%.
7.9%.
Yeah, increasing its market from $3.479 million up to $8.653 million. That's one of the highest growth rates listed anywhere in this entire analysis.
That is seriously high compared to the rates we saw in North America or Europe. Nearly 8%. Are there other places in APAC with those kinds of high growth figures?
Yes, Singapore is projected at 7.077% CAGR. Southeast Asia, looked at collectively, is 7.309%. And Taiwan is strong, too, at 6.342% CAGR.
So it's not just India. There are several areas contributing to that really high regional average for APAC.
Exactly. It's broad-based rapid growth across several key parts of the region.
It seems pretty clear from these numbers, then, that Asia-Pacific is expected to be maybe the major driver of global market expansion for these signals over the next decade.
The scale of projected growth there, particularly in places like India and that Southeast Asia group, it really pops out when you compare it globally.
Okay, moving south from there. Let's take a look at South America. What's the situation down there?
South America is also showing stronger projected growth than North America and Europe. The regional market was $11.631 million in 2021. Expected to reach $14.676 million in 2025 and $23.661 million by 2033.
Okay, and the CAGR for the continent?
The regional CAGR for South America comes in at 6.152%.
6.15%. That's a healthy rate. Again, higher than the global average. Which countries are the main contributors there?
Brazil is the largest market size-wise in the region. It's projected to grow from $4.629 million to $9.28 million. That's at a 6.025% AGR, so pretty close to the regional average.
Right.
But a bit like we saw with Canada up north, Argentina and Chile, while smaller markets, show higher projected growth rates in this data.
Oh, yeah. How much higher are we talking?
Argentina is projected at 6.671% CAGR. It goes from about $2.1 million to $4.6 million, and Chile is at 6.42% CAGR, from just under $1 million to $1.9 million.
Interesting. So faster growth in Argentina and Chile. What about others?
Colombia and Peru are listed closer to Brazil's rate, around 5.6% to 5.9% CAGR for them.
Okay. So South America looks set for pretty robust growth overall, but with maybe specific countries like Argentina and Chile accelerating even faster than the region's biggest market, Brazil.
The data certainly seems to point towards, dynamic expansion across different parts of the continent.
All right, let's head over to the Middle East next. What's the forecast looking like for that region?
The Middle East market started at $9.431 million in 2021, projected to hit $11.86 million in 2025, and then $18.7 million by 2033.
Okay, and the average growth rate for the Middle East? The
From a
KGR?
regional KGR, there is 5.857%, so just a little bit above the global average.
Right, okay. Are there any countries showing particularly strong growth within the Middle East, according to the numbers?
Yes, actually. The UAE stands out. It's projected for a notable 6.575% CTR, going from $1.4 million up to just over $3 million.
6.6% almost for the UAE. Nice. Anyone else?
Turkey is also strong, 6.19% CTR projected, from about $1.76 million to $3.6 million.
So both of those, UAE and Turkey, comfortably above the regional average and the global rate, too. What about Saudi Arabia? Big coastline there.
Saudi Arabia shows solid growth, 5.927% CAGR, going from $3 million up to just over $6 million. So slightly above the regional average, but maybe not quite as fast as the UAE or Turkey based purely on these figures.
Gotcha. And others.
Egypt and Qatar show rates closer to that global average, sort of in the 5.3% to 5.6% range.
Okay, so the Middle East overall is tracking slightly ahead of the global trend, with a couple of countries, UAE and Turkey, really showing accelerated growth within the region.
That's what the data suggests, yeah.
And finally, our last stop, Africa. What does the report indicate for the marine smoke signal market there?
Africa represents a smaller portion of the global market in this data set. Started at $7.23 million in 2021, expected to reach $9.369 million by 2025, and $13.888 million by 2033.
Nearly 14 million by 2033. And the CAGR for Africa?
Africa's regional CAGR is reported at 5.044%.
5%. Okay, so that's actually slightly below the global average.
Correct, yeah, just a bit under.
Which countries are highlighted in the data specifically for Africa?
South Africa is the largest market represented individually. It's projected to grow from $2.357 million in 2021 to $4.891 million in 2033. That's at a 5.759% CAGR.
Okay, 5.76%. So that's actually right around the global average for South Africa itself.
It is. Nigeria is also listed, growing from $1.15 million to $2.275 million. That's at a 5.279% CAGR.
So South Africa's growth rate projected a bit higher than Nigeria's, and both are, near or slightly above the overall African regional average mentioned.
That's right. The data shows growth happening, definitely, but the overall regional pace presented in the report is perhaps a bit more modest compared to some other parts of the world we've looked at.
Okay, let's zoom back out then, bring all these numbers together. We've gone global, regional, down to key countries.
Yeah.
What's the main takeaway from all this data for someone just trying to get a handle on this market?
I think the overriding picture from this report is really one of steady, consistent global market expansion for these marine smoke signals. You see that reflected in the 5.7% global CAGR projected right through to 2033.
Yeah, that consistency is key. And while North America and Europe show solid growth, reliable growth maybe, but slightly slower than that global average, it's pretty clear where the real acceleration is projected based on this data.
Oh, absolutely. Asia Pacific really stands out. It's flagged as the fastest growing region overall with that CAGR over 6.7%. And within APAC, as we discussed, countries like India, Singapore, and that collective Southeast Asia group are projected for particularly high growth rates. Some, like India, getting close to 8%.
Yeah, those were eye-popping numbers. We also saw stronger than average growth projected for South America and the Middle East overall.
That's right. And specific countries there like Argentina, Chile in South America, or the UAE and Turkey in the Middle East showing even faster paces within those regions.
And conversely, we had that one real outlier on the low side.
Yeah, Luxembourg stood out with that projected growth rate under 3%, much lower than pretty much anywhere else listed in detail.
So it really paints a picture of a market with, let's say, consistent global demand overall, but with really significant variations in the pace of growth, depending on where you look geographically.
Exactly. The data clearly points to some pretty dynamic shifts happening regionally, or at least projected to happen.
It gives a very specific view, based purely on these market figures, of where the expansion is anticipated to be the strongest over the coming decade. And that pretty much wraps up our deep dive into this market analysis. We've taken what looks like a detailed report and hopefully pulled out the core numbers for you, showing the global trends, the leading regions, and those specific countries driving growth, or maybe lagging a bit, in the marine smoke signal market between 2021 and 2033.
It's definitely a focused snapshot based on this one analysis, but yeah, the data offers some real insight into the market's pulse.
Well, thank you for joining us as we explored this data.
Always a pleasure to share these kinds of insights with you.
So as you think about these projections we've discussed, that overall steady global increase, but also those quite different growth rates across continents and countries, here's a thought. What might this widespread, though uneven, projected market growth for marine smoke signals potentially suggest about the ongoing evolution of maritime safety standards and maybe their implementation around the world over the next decade? Just thinking purely based on the market activity reflected in these numbers. Something to consider.
Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to a deep dive into, wow, maybe a corner of the maritime world you don't think about too often. The marine smoke signal market. We're looking at insights today from a report by Cognitive Market Research.
Right.
And, you might be thinking, smoke signals, how much is there really to...
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
And, you might be thinking, smoke signals, how much is there really to say? But stick with us.
Yeah.
Because this seemingly pretty simple, maybe low-tech safety device, it actually operates in a surprisingly dynamic market.
That's absolutely right. I mean, these aren't just, colorful puffs of smoke. They're really critical safety items.
Critical.
Yeah.
And our goal here really is to figure out what's actually driving this market, what hurdles it's facing, and some of the, frankly, unexpected trends shaping where it's going. It's much more involved than you might think.
Absolutely. So let's jump right in. What's pushing this market? The report points to a few key drivers.
Okay.
First one, maybe the most basic, is just regulatory compliance.
Exactly. Yeah. Global maritime safety standards, they're non-negotiable, really. We're talking rules from bodies like the IMO, that's the International Maritime Organization, and treaties like SOLA.
Safety of life at sea, right.
Precisely. And these rules, they mandate specific types, specific numbers of safety gear, including smoke signals, on pretty much every vessel. Huge cargo ships, tankers, right down to many smaller commercial boats, even some recreational ones.
So that creates a constant baseline demand. You just have to have them.
You have to. It's a bedrock demand manufacturers need to meet.
Okay. But it's not just mandatory stuff driving it. The report also mentions the growth in marine tourism. Recreational boating globally.
Oh, that's a huge factor. Yeah. Think of more yachts, sailboats, charter boats.
Yeah.
People just out enjoying the water.
Right.
All these boats need safety gear. Now, the rules for smaller pleasure craft, they can vary a bit place to place, but there's still this really strong push for safety awareness. People want to equip their boats properly.
Which includes signals.
So it's like this parallel demand, driven purely by leisure.
And it's interesting how tech, even for something like a smoke signal, is also becoming a driver now.
It really is. It's not just about, making smoke anymore. Innovations are making these signals better, more appealing.
Like what, specifically?
Well, things like developing non-toxic formulas. That means less environmental worry when they're used or, disposed of.
Ah, okay. Greener smoke.
Sort of, yeah. And engineering signals for better visibility. Maybe they can be seen further away or in bad weather. And longer shelf life tech is also really important. Cuts down on frequent, costly replacements.
Okay, so regulations, recreation, and better tech are pushing things forward. But where does the market, run into trouble? What are the big challenges the report brings up?
Well, one major hurdle is actually the very thing creating the demand. The sheer complexity of the regulations.
Yeah, the rules themselves.
Exactly. They're necessary, of course, but meeting all the detailed technical specs, the testing, the certifications, getting approved by different national and international bodies, it can be incredibly expensive and time-consuming for the manufacturer.
Right, I can imagine. A bureaucratic maze.
It really can be.
Yeah.
And that complexity, it eventually affects costs and choices for the boat operators, too.
So it's not just making it proving it meets like dozens of different standards. What about actually getting these signals out there, distribution?
Yeah, that ties into another challenge. Awareness and enforcement aren't always consistent, particularly in some developing maritime regions.
Okay.
The international standards exist, but whether they're fully implemented, whether people truly understand the importance, it's not uniform across the globe. And that creates safety gaps, market inefficiencies.
And then there are the signals themselves, right? The traditional ones.
Right. Don't forget the product limitations. Traditional pyrotechnic signals, the ones using explosives, they have definite shelf lives, often quite limited.
Right.
And they need careful storage because, well, they're hazardous materials. Managing expiration dates, proper disposal, that's a genuine logistical headache and a safety concern.
That makes total sense. Can't just toss expired flares in the bin. So, dealing with all that complexity, those limitations, where's the market actually going? What are the future trends?
A really big shift is towards environmental sustainability and safety, of course.
Okay.
Manufacturers are actively working on non-pyrotechnic options, more eco-friendly solutions. We're talking signals using different chemical reactions, maybe biodegradable materials, less hazardous all around, storage and after use. Addresses those environmental worries directly.
Right. Moving beyond the old flare model, that fits with the bigger green push in shipping generally.
Exactly. And another really interesting trend is integrating these signals into smarter marine safety systems.
How so?
Well, we're seeing signals designed to be part of, say, a GPS-enabled emergency kit. So activating the signal might also send out a location alert automatically or link into the boat's communication system. Better rescue coordination.
Making it part of a connected safety net, more than just a visual sign.
Precisely. A big step up.
What about the user, the person who actually has to, use this thing in an emergency?
User-friendliness. That's a huge focus now. The trend is towards making them more compact, lighter, easier to understand and use.
Makes sense. Stressful situation.
Absolutely. Especially for, say, recreational boaters or anyone in a high-stress scenario. You need something simple to store, fast to grab, straightforward to set off, maybe even if you're wearing gloves or the boat's pitching around. Vital.
And you mentioned regional differences earlier. Are there specific areas driving future growth?
Definitely. Those developing maritime economies, think parts of Southeast Asia, Latin America, Africa, they're rapidly adopting and, crucially, enforcing international safety standards as their own shipping and tourism grows.
So new markets opening up?
Huge new growth zones, yeah. Big demand for modern, compliant safety gear, including these signals.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, it's really clear the marine smoke signal market is, well, way more than just a simple flare.
For sure.
It's fundamentally shaped by those global regulations. It's fueled by more people getting out on the water, and it's really being pushed forward by tech improvements. It has to navigate these tricky hurdles like regulatory complexity and the old product limits, but it's clearly evolving, moving towards greener, smarter, easier to use solutions.
And that growth is increasingly coming from those developing regions catching up on safety standards. It's a great example, really, of a market being transformed by compliance, innovation, and that global push for safer, more sustainable ways of doing things.
What's really fascinating, I think, is how even these basic, really essential safety items are being totally reshaped by tech and global rules. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other everyday essential things might be going through a similar quiet revolution driven by forces we don't usually even think about?
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.